Unit 2, FRQ homework, question number 2. So in this particular case, it's much more computational than some of the other ones we've been doing. In this, we're given the certain values for g and g prime of x that's given in the table, and then we're also given a function. Now, we have learned the chain rule by now, but at that time, at the end of Unit 1, does not include the chain rule. So this should be a clue that we need to put this in the calculator. But we'll do that in Part B when we're going to need the values. So if it's a calculator, and don't spend a lot of time doing things by hand if you could just put it in the calculator and get a value. Using values of g from the table, estimate g prime of 5. We've done this lots of times by now. G prime of 5, and the key is, look, it's an estimate. So you need to have an approximation symbol here. You need to show what values you're using and then substitute in those values. Technically, you could stop here. You don't have to simplify, but you have to actually show which values you're picking. You can't just write g of 6 minus g of 4. You have to substitute in the actual values, but then you can stop. For Part B, I can give you some hints here. First of all, you have to have either the first row or first line here or the second line. You don't necessarily have to do both, but let's say you make a mistake and you put values in incorrectly. They will give you at least 1 point if you have the formula correct, like the green one that I'm highlighting right now. So in that case, I would always write it just as a good habit. If you just started with this one here in yellow, that would be fine, but I'm just saying if you make a mistake, like if you say accidentally of 3 instead of 2, then the whole thing is wrong. But if you got the general formula first, they will give you some partial credit for that. Now, for us, we need to find, first of all, f prime of 2 and g prime of 2. G prime of 2, you just go up to the table and look at 2. We have 4. So that's how I got that one. But the other piece, we need to use the calculator. All right. So a couple of things, and I'm going to write here on the side, I wrote here on the side what the vernacular is in the calculator. The one thing I want to point out, the TI-89 is super sensitive to multiplication with a variable and then other things. If you don't put the multiplication sign in, it will misread x sign as like one variable. It's for some, it's a little bit strange there. Or you need to put a parenthesis around the sign like this. So I think it's much easier just writing the multiplication symbol there. Once you have that in, just like we did in FRQ, I think it was FRQ-A, I showed you the calculator how to do, then you go to the home screen, take the derivative of y1 with respect to 1 at the value 2 and hit enter. It will most likely give you a decimal because there isn't like an easy way, or it might write it in like this complicated with radicals, and I don't want you to write that down. Just write the decimal representation. Remember, at least you need at least 3 decimal places. I tend to do more when I can, and I would store, in this case it's a simple problem, so storing is not necessary. That's why I didn't bother doing that. But it's always a good idea maybe to store the value just out of habit, to have it, oh yeah, I put that in A if I needed to. Just like I showed you on the FRQ before. So then we substitute in these values for f prime of 2 minus g prime of 2, and hopefully you got negative 6.449 at the very least. If you did more decimal places, great. I just found the derivative by hand, so those of you guys that did it, fine. But it's complicated. Oh, did I just accidentally erase something? I did, yeah. But it makes it more complicated. It's more fiddly. Then you have to substitute in those values. Ooh, it's not very nice. And it's okay with the calculator to use decimals. As long as you use at least 3 decimal places, we're good to go. So that would be Part B. Part C, again, you got to use the product rule. So I suggest, again, even though it's not necessarily required, to have step number 1 here. I'm highlighting next to it with green, and then show the substitution of the 4 and then the actual values. So writing a ledger is always a good idea. What are the things that I need? I need f of 4, I need f prime of 4, g of 4, g prime of 4. Also, if you accidentally got the wrong value for one of those and you have a little ledger out here, they can see, oh, they just got, maybe they put it in the calculator wrong or they read the table wrong. So instead, if it's worth 3 points, instead of losing 2 points, you would only lose 1 point if it's an arithmetic error or something like that. And sometimes if it's like only worth 2 points and they can see it's just like you missed a decimal or you did something silly, sometimes holistically, they will then, you would only lose 1 point overall for the whole test if there were other minor errors in the whole question, rather than losing a full point each time you made those minor errors. It just kind of depends. Now, we don't know ahead of time how they're going to grade it each year, so it's just a guess. So I made a little ledger. Don't forget, we're going to store now because we're going to substituting in. So I showed you in the other piece how to do that. But just to review how to do the vernacular in the calculator, first of all, we already have in y1 the function that we needed, the x times sine of square root of 3x squared plus 5. Then you're going to put in y1 of 4 in the home screen and then store that as a. And then for the b part or the derivative part, you just have to make a little note to yourself, what is what? And then at the end of it, look, I'm substituting in. So this here, just as an aside in a different color, this was my A and this was my B. When I substitute in then, I would, and you could even say, oh look, this is A and this is equal to B, as long as you have on the side what the decimal representation would be in one place. It's just so you don't have to write it lots of times. Oops. Then you would say, okay, it's 1 times, that first one is A, plus 5 times B is equal to S prime of 4. And then put that in the calculator, and hopefully you're getting 25.45537, or at least 25.455. For the next one, you're going to use the quotient rule. It's just a lot of practice of the rules. Again, here, is it necessary? Here, no, as long as they can see that you did the rule. So either, at least one of these two need to be there. The yellow one for sure, the green one, not so much, but it's a good habit to have. And again, we're going to do a ledger. Which we're going to do a ledger. We're going to do a ledger, and then we're going to do here, let's see, the same thing, but store it in A and B again. And then look, in the calculator I have here, I can tell you what's nice about it is you could go up, because you've already have these instructions in this instruction here in the calculator, but it was for 4 before. You can use the arrow up key and go and capture that, but I'll show that in the next video for a second. Go and capture it up at the next one. And then the same for, all we have to do is change the 4 to a 6, and the same for the derivative. You can go and grab it and capture it, and then write our little ledger for it over here on the side, and substitute in the value. So this, I think, is really the hardest part about it, is really just the calculator portion of it. But again, the vernacular for it. And then this is what I even, in the calculator, this is literally, once I've stored for A and B, this is what I'm going to write in.